Hello and welcome back. This week I want to talk about the market in terms of my own trading and my typical weekly assessment of what I think next week is going to become. This last several weeks, months really, have been reasonably stable, or flat. Whatever word you think is best to fit. Because I really don't think it matters in the context of what we're seeing in relation to what the media is promoting. The media has been promoting the usual end of the world rhetoric, but that's not what the market shows. This is Euro USD, and as we can see, month over month, it has been reasonably quiet. There have been a few spikes here and there, but for the most part, we've had a very clear boundary range that we've been working in. That, I think, is the biggest takeaway of this entire situation. Despite the hype of the media, the world really hasn't changed that much financially since March of 2025. Now again, this is month over month. This chart is monthly. And that is the real takeaway to the entirety of this discussion. And that's really what I think is going to continue to happen over the next couple of months, really. But particularly over the next week. I don't think we're going to see much of a change. I honestly don't believe there's going to be any major market movement. There might be a few standouts. But from the standpoint of the overall market structure that the JRSA charts have shown, I think this is going to be pretty much stale for the summer. But let's actually take and look at the weekly chart and see if it gives any additional details. Even looking at the weekly chart, we see really not that much of a change. There's enough information to suggest that we might be in a potential uptrend. But does that actually give us a point or perspective that we might break the highest high we've had for the last several months? That's the question. Here we actually did break the previous highest high, and that was about 10 weeks ago. But from the standpoint of what we're seeing now, we're not there. Although we could actually end up seeing what we saw when we actually did push the higher high and we had that huge wick. Overall, though, are we going to? That's the question that everybody is asking. Are we going to continue to push upward on Euro USD, or is it going to continue to remain in a range? I don't know that it matters. If you've got the right strategy that takes into account volatility, I don't know that it really matters. And I think that's the whole point of the question. Now let's go down to the daily chart. I'm going to zoom out a little bit to give us a better perspective so that we can see the various weeks in question. And we clearly see the order book in the background between the buys and the sells, the bids and the asks of where the market thinks it's going to remain, where buyers and sellers have placed limit orders. And we can clearly see that there isn't that much of a push upward comparatively speaking. There's quite a few sell orders, but the buy orders really seem to be more below what we are right now, meaning people want better opportunities. And that pressure between the buyers and the sellers, I think, is going to keep prices lower. So looking where we're at right now, I think the pressure between the buyers and the sellers is going to push the market downward. When we look at the order book in the background, we can see where that pressure is, where that dynamic is. And that, I think, is the most critical part of the entire discussion. I don't believe the market is going to push to the upper boundaries just on the basis of what it's been historically. Now, there's always that one-off chance that it could take off like it did in the past, as we see on the screen for the part that I circled, where it got several days in a row of nothing but just a complete drive upwards. But I really don't suspect we are there yet. I don't think the market has enough confidence on the global level to really be able to push that type of a consensus. I would expect to see more activity within the order book up here above the current pricing. But where all of the activity is down below the current pricing, that's where I think more traffic is going to be in terms of the pressure. But let me know what you think. Leave a comment below. Tell me what you think the market is going to do based upon your own trading. Do you think we could actually get a fake out and then skyrocket? Or do you think the market is going to do what I think and continue dropping back down based upon the order book pressure? It should be interesting no matter what if you have the right strategy. But that really is something that is the whole point of everything. Strategy. So I'm going to zoom out to where all of my transactions can be seen. The reason for that is very simple. If we look at the chart and we see all of my orders, I've got a whole ton of them, about 55 or 57 of them. But we can see something unique about those orders. Part of my own risk management in play. Down here, where all of the orders look like they're tightly compacted, the volatility wasn't that significant, so my orders were closer together. But as the volatility started climbing, you'll notice that the gaps between the orders also began getting larger. That is, as the market became more unstable, my orders began spreading out. That's part of my risk assessment. That's how I can manage these insane market shifts and not blow my account up. That's the biggest and most difficult part of this style of trading. Keeping your leverage under control. And that means really paying attention to where the buyers and sellers are. And right now, they appear to be predominantly in this range. The range that conveniently we have been in for the last 8 months. So if we continue within that range, which I believe we will, I don't see any changes for the foreseeable future. Certainly not next week, but I think really and realistically the rest of the month is going to be the same pattern that we see now. So from the standpoint of your trades, I think it's going to be a worst case scenario approach like what we have had, and I think seeing the entire market in this range is going to be significant. When we look back historically, we can see we hit the lowest low back in 2022. There was a possible chance here in 2025 that we might have gone downward even further, but we didn't. Instead, we did just the opposite, and we had the big push that drove us up to where we're at now. I personally do not see us returning to 2021 highs anytime soon. And I'm going to say that with, I would say, a 80% expectancy of being correct. Because it is very possible that something could happen in the news cycle or in the real world and prices are going to just skyrocket upwards. But at the same time, it's also possible, like we saw between 2021 and 2022, where prices are just going to plummet hard. Both can be true at once. In the arc that we see between 2022 and 2025, where we had basically an upwards and then a downwards swipe. So from the standpoint of your strategy, being able to handle market movement and volatility, I think are going to be the most critical elements of trading. I think that's going to be the most important part of your trading. In fact, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that you can probably not focus as much on your algorithm or your indicators as much as you need to on your volatility and risk assessments. I think those are going to be the most critical elements of trading over the foreseeable future. But of course, I've been wrong before, which is fine. But that's the beauty of trading. That's the beauty of a worst case scenario. I don't have to be right, as long as I'm smart enough to be able to plan in stop losses and when I want to actually change something in the market direction I'm going. For example, volatility versus higher volatility. Simple changes can make a big difference. And it's not always about the algorithm or the approach you use or the number of indicators. More often than not, it's about the foresight of just being able to weather whatever the market does. Share your thoughts. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment. Tell me about your trading. How have you been doing? Thank you for watching, and until next time.